The Great Hall of Zentari Prime stretched beyond what most beings could see with their eyes. Crystal walls rose high into the air and caught light from 3 different suns that shone through the transparent dome above. Representatives from 847 different worlds sat in their assigned places, waiting for the meeting to begin. Today they would discuss the newest species that had been found in the outer regions of the galaxy. Ambassador Kethfer of the Zelonian Empire stood at the center platform. His blue skin glowed softly under the lights, and his forearms moved as he prepared to speak. The Zelonians had been part of the Galactic Council for over 2,000 years, and their opinions carried great weight among the older species. Fellow council members, Kethfer began in his deep voice that echoed through the hall. We gather today to discuss the species from the 3rd planet of a yellow star they call Sol. They have named their world Earth and themselves humans. A low murmur went through the assembled delegates. Many had heard rumors about these new creatures, but few had seen the official reports. Kethfer activated a holographic display that showed images of humans going about their daily lives on their blue and green world. As you can see, they are a bipedal species with only 2 arms and simple sensory organs. Their lifespans are remarkably short, lasting only about 100 of their local years. They have recently achieved faster than light travel, but their technology remains primitive by our standards. General Vexthorn from the warrior race of Krillians leaned forward in his massive chair. His scarred face and battle armor made him look fierce even when sitting still. What of their military capabilities? He growled in his rough voice. Kethfer touched a control, and the display changed to show human weapons and spacecraft. Their weapons are based on crude projectile systems. They launch small metal pieces at high speed rather than using proper energy weapons. Their ships lack adequate shielding, and their combat formations appear chaotic and unplanned. Several delegates made sounds of amusement. The idea of using metal projectiles in space combat seemed laughable to beings who had mastered plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes thousands of years ago. Their society is also concerning, Kethfer continued. Rather than being unified under a single government, they are divided into nearly 200 separate nations. These nations frequently engage in conflicts with each other over resources, territory, and ideological differences. They have fought thousands of wars throughout their recorded history. Counselor Mindweave of the telepathic collective spoke without moving her lips. Her thoughts reached every being in the hall through the translation network. Such division suggests they lack the mental discipline required for galactic citizenship. How can they contribute to our peaceful society if they cannot even achieve peace among themselves? Dr. Crystalthoughts from the Academic Union of Vulture adjusted his mechanical body and spoke in his electronic voice. Their scientific advancement is also limited. They have only just begun to understand quantum mechanics, and their knowledge of hyperspace travel is basic at best. It took them nearly 10,000 years to progress from simple tools to space flight, while most council species achieved this in half that time. The discussion continued for several hours as various representatives shared their thoughts about humanity. Most agreed that while humans showed some promise in creativity and adaptability, they were far too primitive and divided to be granted full membership in the council. Meanwhile, far away on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his office at the United Earth Space Command headquarters. Outside his window, he could see the construction of humanity's newest starship taking shape in the orbital shipyard. The message that had arrived from the Galactic Council 3 days ago still sat on his desk. The message was formal and somewhat condescending in tone. It welcomed humanity to the galactic community, but made it clear that Earth would only be granted probationary membership. To earn full recognition, humans would need to prove themselves through a series of tests and trials. Dr. Lisa Parker knocked on Morrison's door and entered without waiting for permission. The xenobiologist looked worried as she sat down across from his desk. "I've been analyzing the linguistic patterns in their message, Jake. The way they phrase things suggests they see us as children being given a simple task to keep us busy." Morrison nodded as he read through the message again. "They want us to mediate a trade dispute between 2 of their member species. Something about mining rights in a system called Corvin. Previous mediators have been working on it for 3 years without success, and they think we can solve it." Lisa said with a bitter laugh. Either they're giving us an impossible task to prove we're not ready, or they genuinely believe this is the best we can handle. Commander Ryan Blake entered the office, carrying a data pad filled with technical specifications. His engineering background made him the natural choice to prepare their ships for this first diplomatic mission. They use Phoenixes ready for departure whenever you give the word, Captain. I've made sure all our systems are running at peak efficiency. Morrison stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Earth's blue oceans and white clouds. Somewhere out there among the stars were hundreds of alien civilizations that had already judged humanity and found them wanting. They saw humans as primitive warlike creatures who lacked the sophistication needed for galactic society. They're in for a surprise, Morrison said quietly. They think they know what humans are capable of based on our technology and our history, but they don't understand what makes us human. Blake and Parker joined him at the window. All three looked up at the stars that no longer seemed distant and unreachable. Earth's first real test in galactic politics was about to begin, and the outcome would determine humanity's place in the universe for generations to come. The Phoenix would launch in 2 days, carrying humanity's hopes and dreams to the stars. What the Galactic Council didn't realize was that they had made their first mistake by underestimating the species from the small blue world that had never known defeat. When their survival was on the line, the Hughes Phoenix dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Corvin system and immediately began scanning the area ahead. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge watching the tactical display fill with contacts as dozens of ships came into view. The dispute between the Delphinians and the Quartzlings had clearly escalated beyond simple negotiations. Captain, I'm reading 43 Delphinian vessels and 37 Quartzling ships spread throughout the asteroid field, reported Lieutenant Sam Carter from the sensor station. They're maintaining defensive positions, but their weapons are powered and ready. Morrison nodded as he studied the tactical situation. Both fleets were positioned around different sections of the asteroid belt that contained the disputed mining rights. Neither side was actively fighting, but the tension was obvious even from a distance. Open a communication channel to both fleets, Morrison ordered. Let them know we're here representing the Galactic Council as mediators. The main screen split to show two very different alien faces. On the left was High Tide Counselor Reefthrow of the Delphinian delegation. His aquatic features included large dark eyes and gill slits that fluttered as he breathed the water mixture in his environmental suit. On the right appeared Facet Speaker Crystalmind, representing the Quartzlings. Her body seemed to be made of living crystal that refracted light in beautiful patterns. So the Council sends the newest species to resolve what their finest diplomatic minds could not accomplish, Reefthrow said through his translation device. His voice carried the sound of bubbling water mixed with obvious amusement. How wonderfully optimistic of them. Crystalmind's response came as harmonic tones that the universal translator converted to words. Your species has existed for mere moments in galactic time, human. What possible wisdom could you offer that we have not already considered? Dr. Eleanor Ross stepped forward from her position near the communication console. As the mission's chief negotiator, she had spent weeks studying everything available about both species and their conflict. We appreciate that this dispute has been ongoing for some time. Rather than begin with traditional diplomatic protocols, we'd like to request detailed geological surveys of the disputed asteroid field. Both alien representatives exchanged glances that clearly showed their confusion. Previous mediators had always started with formal ceremonies, cultural exchanges, and lengthy discussions about historical grievances. The human approach seemed to ignore all established diplomatic procedures. You wish to examine rocks rather than discuss the legal foundations of our respective claims, Reefthrow asked, with what might have been confusion or mockery in his tone. That's correct, Ross replied calmly. We'd also like orbital mechanics, data for the entire asteroid belt, and detailed mineral composition analysis from both of your survey teams. Facet Speaker Crystalmind's crystalline body shifted colors as she processed this unusual request. Very well, human mediator. Though we fail to see how examining what we already know will change anything. The asteroids contain rare minerals that both our species require for our industrial processes. Within hours, both fleets had transmitted massive data files containing 3 years' worth of surveys and analysis. The human team worked through the night in the Phoenix's main conference room, spreading holographic displays across every available surface. Charts showing mineral density, orbital patterns, and geological formations covered the walls, while the negotiating team studied every detail. Lieutenant Commander Pete Johnson coordinated the technical analysis while Dr. Ross focused on understanding the specific needs of each species. Commander Blake provided engineering expertise to help interpret the more complex geological data. Captain Morrison observed from the side, occasionally asking questions, but mostly letting his specialists work. "There's something interesting here," Johnson announced after 18 hours of continuous analysis. "The asteroid field has a unique dual-layer composition that I've never seen before in any of our databases." Ross looked up from her study of Delphinian biomining techniques and quartzling crystal extraction methods. "What kind of dual-layer composition?" Johnson manipulated the holographic display to show a cross-section view of several asteroids. "The surface layer is rich in the metallic compounds that the quartzlings need for their technology, but underneath, there's a completely different mineral structure that's perfect for Delphinian biomining operations." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Dr. Ross stood up and walked to the display, studying the geological charts with new understanding. The two mining methods would actually complement each other perfectly. Quartzling surface extraction would expose the deeper layers for Delphinian biomining, while Delphinian biological processes would purify the remaining surface materials. Blake leaned forward in his chair as the solution took shape. Instead of competing for the same resources, they could be working together in a symbiotic mining operation. Each species would get exactly what they need, without interfering with the other's work. Morrison smiled as he realized what his team had discovered. And nobody thought to look at this before, because they were too focused on dividing the asteroids rather than sharing them. The next morning, Captain Morrison called both fleet commanders to arrange a joint meeting aboard the Phoenix. The conference room had been prepared with environmental controls to accommodate both aquatic and crystalline physiology. High-tide Counselor Reefsrow arrived in a specialized suit filled with his homeworld's ocean water, while Facet Speaker Crystal Mind appeared to float inside a field of harmonic energy. "Honorable representatives, we believe we have identified a solution that will benefit both of your peoples," Dr. Ross began formally. She activated the holographic display showing the asteroid field's unique geological structure. "As you can see, the mineral deposits exist into distinct layers." For the next hour, Ross explained how surface mining and biomining could work together rather than compete against each other. She showed specific asteroids where quartzling extraction would create perfect conditions for Delphinian biological processes. She demonstrated how Delphinian biomining would leave behind purified materials that the quartzlings could use for their advanced technologies. The two alien representatives sat in stunned silence as they realized that a solution had existed all along. Neither species had thought to examine how their different mining techniques might work together, because they had always seen each other as competitors rather than potential partners. "This is remarkable," Reefsrow admitted with obvious amazement in his voice. "In 3 years of negotiations, no mediator suggested that we examine the possibility of cooperative extraction." Crystal Mind's harmonic tones carried notes of surprise and respect. "Your species approaches problems in ways that we had not considered. You seek to change the nature of the conflict rather than simply choose sides within it." Within days, both fleets were working together to establish joint mining operations throughout the asteroid field. The Delphinians and Quartzlings signed formal agreements for ongoing cooperation and requested that copies be sent to the Galactic Council as an example of successful human mediation. News of the breakthrough spread quickly through Council communication networks. Centauri Prime Ambassador Kethva received the report with growing unease. The humans had solved in 48 hours what experienced galactic diplomats had failed to resolve in 3 years. Perhaps his initial assessment of their capabilities had been incomplete. Captain Morrison stood on the Phoenix's observation deck, watching Delphinian and Quartzling ships working side by side in the asteroid field below. His first diplomatic mission had been a success, but he suspected this was only the beginning of humanity's surprises. For the galactic community, the annual Galactic Defense War Games took place in the Nexus system, where artificial planets and stations had been constructed specifically for military training exercises. Admiral Susan Clark stood on the bridge of the UES Phoenix looking out at the massive fleet assembled for the games. Hundreds of ships from dozens of different species filled the space around the central command station. The human contingent looked small compared to the massive dreadnoughts of the Krillian Empire and the sleek battle cruisers of the Techno Union. Earth had brought only 3 ships to the exercise: the Phoenix under Captain Morrison, the Constitution commanded by Captain Jeff Barnes, and the Defiant led by Captain Lisa Martinez. General Vexthorn's scarred face appeared on the main communication screen as he addressed all participating fleets. His reputation as the galaxy's finest military strategist was well known, and his presence at the War Games added prestige to the event. "Welcome to the annual defense exercises," the Krillian general growled in his rough voice. "This year we have been joined by the newest council species. The humans will be assigned to Scenario 7. While more experienced fleets handle the advanced challenges." Commander Ryan Blake checked his data pad and found the details of their assigned scenario. Admiral were being asked to defend a mining colony from simulated pirate raids. "It's listed as a basic defensive exercise suitable for new participants." Admiral Clark smiled grimly as she read through the scenario parameters. The condescending tone was obvious even in the official documentation. The Council clearly expected humanity to struggle with what they considered elementary tactics. "All ships, this is Admiral Clark," she announced over the fleet communication channel. "We're going to show them that humans don't fight by the book. Blake, I want you to coordinate with the other captains and prepare for unconventional deployment." The exercise began with the human fleet taking positions near the mining colony on asteroid designation Mining Station Alpha 7. The facility was built into a large asteroid and housed several thousand simulated colonists, along with valuable or processing equipment. Captain Morrison studied the tactical display showing the approaching pirate forces. The simulation included 12 raider vessels armed with standard weapons and following predictable attack patterns. According to the exercise parameters, the pirates would attempt to disable the colony's defenses and steal the processed ore. "Blake, what's the status on our special preparations?" Morrison asked over the secure channel. "All 3 ships have ejected their secondary cargo holds and repositioned them throughout the asteroid field, Captain. The mining equipment modifications are complete, and the Marines have finished their deployments." Instead of establishing a traditional defensive perimeter around the colony, the human fleet had split up and appeared to retreat toward the outer edge of the asteroid field. To the watching Council observers, it looked like the humans were abandoning their assignment. In the face of superior numbers, Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Hayes commanded the Marine ground forces that had been secretly deployed throughout the mining facility. His troops had used their knowledge of guerrilla warfare to set up hidden positions and improvise defensive systems using the colony's own industrial equipment. "All ground units, this is Hayes," he whispered into his communication device. "Remember, these simulated pirates expect a conventional defense. We're going to give them something they've never seen before." The pirate simulation began its attack run, expecting minimal resistance from the apparently retreating human ships. The first wave of raiders descended toward the mining colony, confident that they would face only automated defense systems and frightened colonists. As the pirate vessels entered the asteroid field, they encountered the first surprise. Captain Barnes had positioned the Constitution behind a large asteroid and had attached mining charges, 24 of rocks in the raiders' flight path. When the pirates came within range, he detonated the charges, creating a devastating obstacle course of high-velocity debris. 3 pirate ships were destroyed immediately, while others were forced to reduce speed and change course to avoid the improvised minefield. This brought them directly into the engagement zone, where Captain Martinez waited with the Defiant. The Defiant had been modified with mining lasers and ore hauling equipment that the pirates' sensors had dismissed as civilian machinery. When Martinez opened fire, the industrial equipment proved surprisingly effective at close range. destroying two more raider vessels before they realized what was happening. On the surface of the mining colony, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes watched the remaining pirates attempt to land their assault forces. The facility appeared deserted with all lights shut down and no visible activity. The pirates deployed their troops and began moving toward the ore processing centers, expecting minimal resistance. Now Hayes whispered into his communicator. The entire mining facility suddenly came alive with coordinated attacks from hidden positions. Marines emerged from concealed bunkers, using improvised explosives made from mining charges. Industrial machinery that had seemed abandoned suddenly activated as improvised weapons systems. The psychological impact was devastating. The pirates found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere, and nowhere, using weapons that shouldn't exist, and tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Captain Morrison chose this moment to execute the Phoenix's final maneuver. His ship had positioned itself on the far side of the largest asteroid in the field, and had attached every piece of mining equipment it could carry to its hull. As the Phoenix came around the asteroid at maximum speed, it looked like a flying junkyard. The remaining pirate vessels turned to engage this apparently damaged human ship, only to discover that Morrison had turned his vessel into a massive kinetic weapon. The Phoenix rammed the lead pirate destroyer, while simultaneously ejecting its entire cargo of mining charges in a carefully calculated pattern. The explosion chain reaction that followed destroyed every remaining pirate vessel in a spectacular display of debris and energy that lit up the entire asteroid field. The simulation ended with complete annihilation of the attacking forces, at the cost of 0 human casualties and minimal damage to the mining colony. The council observers sat in stunned silence as the final results appeared on their screens. Not only had the humans achieved total victory, but they had done so using tactics that no other species had ever attempted. The exercise that was supposed to be a simple introduction to galactic warfare had become a masterclass in unconventional thinking. General Vex Thorn stared at his tactical displays, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. The humans had turned mining equipment into weapons, used industrial facilities as combat zones, and employed psychological warfare in ways that the galaxy's finest military minds had never considered. Impossible, he muttered to his staff officers. No species achieves results like that without decades of advanced military training. On board the Phoenix, Admiral Clark received congratulations from her captains. As the war games officially concluded, the human fleet had not only succeeded in their assigned scenario, but had set new records for efficiency and innovation in the process. Admiral, we're receiving communication requests from over 30 different species, Lieutenant Carter reported from the communication station. They all want to know more about human military tactics and training methods. Clark smiled as she realized that humanity had just announced itself as a major military force in galactic politics. The Council had expected them to struggle with basic defense scenarios, but instead they had revolutionized the entire concept of warfare. The war games had been intended to assess human military capability, but instead they had demonstrated that Earth brought something entirely new to galactic civilization. The other species were beginning to understand that they had seriously underestimated the potential of the small blue world and its innovative inhabitants. Deep in the council chambers of Centauri Prime, an emergency session was taking place. Behind closed doors, the isolationist faction, led by the ancient ethereal collective, had watched humanity's recent successes with growing alarm. These energy-based beings had existed for millions of years, and they viewed change as a threat to the established order they had worked so long to create. Ethereal Prime consciousness void whisper manifested as a shimmering cloud of dark energy at the center of the chamber. Its voice echoed through the minds of every delegate present without using sound or translation devices. The message carried undertones of ancient power and barely controlled hostility. Fellow council members, we have witnessed concerning developments regarding the newest species. The entity communicated through direct thought projection. These humans solve problems by fundamentally altering the nature of the problems themselves. Such unpredictability represents a danger. To our carefully maintained galactic stability, Ambassador Keffer shifted uncomfortably in his seat as other delegates murmured their agreement or disagreement. The Zelonian had already suffered political damage from his initial assessment of human capabilities, and he was reluctant to take any position that might prove wrong again. "What do you propose?" Void Whisper asked Counselor Mindweave from the telepathic collective. Her mental voice carried curiosity mixed with caution as she probed the edges of the ethereal's thoughts. "One final test," Void Whisper replied with satisfaction radiating from its energy form. "If these humans are truly as adaptable and capable as recent events suggest, then let them prove it. By accomplishing what no council species has managed in 10,000 years." The chamber fell silent as delegates waited to hear what impossible task the ethereal had in mind. Void Whisper's energy form pulsed with malicious anticipation as it prepared to reveal its plan. "Let them negotiate with the savage clans of the Outer Rim," the entity announced. "Let them bring peace to those who have known only war since before." Most current council members evolved. Gasps and protests erupted throughout the chamber as the full implications of the proposal became clear. The savage clans were legendary for their violence and complete rejection of civilized contact. The entire Outer Rim region had been declared off-limits to council ships after hundreds of failed diplomatic missions had ended in disaster. "That's not a test, it's a death sentence," protested Dr. Crystalthoughts from the Academic Union. "No species has ever successfully negotiated with the clans. They attack any vessel that enters their territory regardless of peaceful intentions." Void Whisper's energy form brightened with pleasure at the academic's reaction. "Exactly my point, colleague. If the humans fail, it will prove they are not ready for full council membership. If by some miracle they succeed, then they will have earned their place." Through the most difficult trial imaginable, the debate continued for hours, but eventually the motion was approved by a narrow margin. The isolationist faction had managed to convince enough delegates that humanity needed one more test before being granted full recognition. The assignment would be presented as an honor rather than a punishment. 3 days later on Earth, President Chen sat in her office reading the official communication from the Galactic Council. The message was carefully worded to sound like a prestigious assignment, but she could sense the underlying hostility in its tone. "They want us to make contact with species that have been fighting each other for 10,000 years," she said to the assembled military and diplomatic leaders. "Species that have destroyed every previous attempt at peaceful contact." Dr. Lisa Parker studied the limited intelligence data available about the savage clans from her position at the conference table. According to council records, the Outer Rim contains dozens of different species locked in perpetual warfare. They've developed their entire cultures around combat, and they see diplomacy as a sign of weakness. Captain Morrison leaned back in his chair as he considered the magnitude of the challenge. "So the council is sending us to make peace among people who have built their entire civilization on the concept of war. It gets worse," added Commander Blake from his review of the technical specifications. "The region is considered so dangerous that council ships are forbidden from entering. We'll have no backup and no support if things go wrong." President Chen stood up and walked to the window overlooking the United Earth capital. Outside she could see construction crews working on new buildings that would house the growing interstellar diplomatic corps. Earth was changing rapidly as humanity adapted to its role in galactic society. "Who do we send on a mission like this?" she asked without turning around from the window. "I volunteer," Morrison said immediately. "The Phoenix crew has experience with unconventional situations." "No, Jake," Chen replied as she turned back to face the room. "This isn't a job for a ship captain. This requires someone who understands cultures and conflict at a fundamental level." Dr. Marcus Webb had been sitting quietly in the corner, listening to the discussion. The former Special Forces operator turned anthropologist had spent years studying human warfare and its relationship to cultural development. His unique background made him one of Earth's leading experts on both combat and civilization. "I'll take the assignment," Webb said simply, "but I'll need to choose my own team, and I'll need complete freedom to approach the situation. However I think best." Chen studied the man who had volunteered for what appeared to be a suicide mission. Webb's military record showed exceptional courage. under fire while his academic work demonstrated deep understanding of how societies function and change. "What kind of team do you have in mind, Marcus?" she asked. Webb stood up and began pacing around the room as he outlined his strategy. "I need a linguist who can learn new languages quickly and understand cultural communication patterns. I need a combat medic who can earn respect among warrior cultures. And I need an engineer who can understand and improve alien technology." "You're planning to fight them," Morrison observed. "No, Jake, I'm planning to understand them," Webb replied. "Every human culture that has ever emphasized warfare has done so for specific reasons. Usually those reasons involve survival, resource competition, or cultural identity. If we can understand why the clans fight, we might be able to redirect that energy toward more productive goals." Dr. Rachel Stone volunteered as the mission linguist. Her work with Earth's remaining isolated cultures had given her unique insights into how language shapes thought and behavior. Sergeant Tony Rodriguez offered his services as the combat medic, citing his experience treating wounded soldiers in some of Earth's most dangerous regions. Commander Amy Foster completed the team as the engineering specialist. Her background in adapting human technology for alien environments would be essential if they needed to work with clan equipment and facilities. "What's your ship going to need for this mission?" Blake asked as he began calculating technical requirements. "The UES Endeavor with enhanced shields and weapons, but more importantly, with complete libraries of human history, art, music, and literature," Webb replied. "If we're going to change 10,000 years of warfare, we need to show them that there are other ways to live." The team spent 2 weeks preparing for their departure, while Earth's best scientists and engineers modified the Endeavor for its dangerous mission. The ship was equipped with the most advanced defensive systems available, but Webb insisted that their greatest weapons would be understanding and creativity rather than firepower. As the Endeavor prepared to leave Earth's orbit, the entire planet watched with mixture of hope and fear. Humanity's place in the galactic community would be determined by whether four people could accomplish what hundreds of previous diplomatic missions had failed to achieve. The ship crossed into hyperspace, carrying not just the hopes of Earth, but the future of human civilization among the stars. In the Outer Rim, the savage clans continued their eternal wars, unaware that their universe was about to change forever. The UES Endeavor dropped out of hyperspace in the heart of the Forbidden Zone and immediately found itself in the middle of a massive space battle. 3 different fleets were engaged in brutal combat, with ships exploding and debris flying in all directions. Dr. Marcus Webb stood on the bridge watching the tactical display with fascination rather than fear. "Captain Rodriguez, give me a full sensor sweep of all the combatants," Webb ordered as he studied the fighting patterns. "I want to understand their tactics and technology before we make contact." The battle involved ships from 3 distinct design philosophies. The Predator clan vessels were sleek and fast-built for hit-and-run attacks. The Hunter tribe ships were heavily armored and designed for close combat. The Berserker Horde used massive crewed vessels that relied on overwhelming firepower and ramming attacks. Dr. Webb, they're all targeting each other, but none of them seem to be trying to actually win, observed Commander Foster from the engineering station. "It's like they're fighting for the sake of fighting, rather than trying to achieve any strategic objective." Dr. Stone looked up from her linguistic analysis workstation with excitement in her eyes. "Marcus, I'm picking up communication patterns that suggest this isn't random violence. There are structured challenges being issued and formal responses being given. This is ritualized combat." Webb smiled as he began to understand what they were witnessing. His anthropological training had taught him to look for the cultural meaning behind apparent chaos. They're not fighting to destroy each other, they're fighting to prove themselves. This is how they communicate status and resolve disputes. "So, what do we do?" asked Sergeant Rodriguez as he monitored the ship's defensive systems. "We can't exactly join the battle with 1 ship against 3 fleets. We don't join the battle, Tony. We challenge all of them at once," Webb replied as he moved to the communication station. "Open a channel on all frequencies and make sure the universal translator is set to maximum clarity." The message that went out across the battlefield was simple and direct. "Warriors of the Outer Rim, I am Marcus Webb of Earth, and I come to test my species against yours in honorable combat. I challenge your greatest champions to prove which culture produces the finest warriors. The response was immediate and overwhelming. All three fleets broke off their engagement and converged on the small human vessel. But instead of opening fire, they demanded to know what manner of combat the humans proposed, and whether they understood the consequences of issuing such a challenge. War Chief Scarfang of the Predator clans appeared on the main screen first. His reptilian features were scarred from countless battles, and his eyes glowed with predatory intelligence. Human creature, you dare challenge warriors who have fought for 10,000 years. Do you seek death or glory? Blood Speaker Redclaw of the Hunter tribes materialized next. Her feline form was covered in ritual tattoos that told the story of her victories in combat. Your ship is small and your crew is few. What makes you think you can stand against the might of the Outer Rim? Battle Lord Irontooth of the Berserker Hordes completed the trio of leaders. His massive frame was enhanced with mechanical implants that gave him the appearance of a living war machine. Speak quickly, human, before we decide that your challenge is an insult worthy of immediate destruction. Webb took a deep breath and prepared to make the most important speech of his career. Everything depended on his ability to redirect these warrior cultures toward something productive while still respecting their fundamental nature. Honored war leaders, I propose a new form of combat that will test not just your individual strength, but the strength of your entire peoples. He began. I challenge you to compete in scenarios that require cooperation between clans to achieve victory. The three leaders exchanged glances that conveyed confusion and suspicion. No outsider had ever proposed cooperative challenges to the savage clans. Their entire culture was built around competition and individual achievement. You speak of cooperation as if it were a form of combat, Scarfang said with obvious puzzlement. How can working together prove warrior superiority? Webb activated a holographic display, showing a damaged space station drifting nearby. The structure had been caught in the crossfire of countless battles and was slowly breaking apart with survivors trapped inside. The first challenge is simple, Webb announced. Rescue the survivors from that station using whatever methods you think best. But here's the twist. Each clan can only use their traditional strengths. Predator clan provides speed and mobility. Hunter tribe provides protection and defense. Berserker horde provides raw power and breakthrough capability. Dr. Stone monitored the linguistic patterns as the three leaders discussed this unprecedented proposal among themselves. Marcus, they're using formal challenge protocols that I've never seen in any galactic database. This is an ancient ritual structure that predates most council civilizations. The rescue operation began with careful coordination between the three clans. Predator ships used their speed to scout safe approach routes, while hunter vessels provided defensive screens against debris. Berserker forces used their powerful tractor beams to stabilize the station structure while rescue teams went inside. Sergeant Rodriguez watched the operation with professional interest as he monitored the medical aspects of the rescue. They're actually pretty good at this when they work together. Their individual specializations complement each other perfectly. Commander Foster was equally impressed by the engineering coordination required for such a complex operation. Each clan has developed technologies that the others lack. Combined, they're far more capable than any of them would be alone. The station rescue was completed successfully, with all survivors recovered, and minimal casualties among the rescue teams. But more importantly, the three clan leaders had discovered something they had never experienced before: the satisfaction of achievement through cooperation, rather than domination. Impressive, human Irontooth admitted grudgingly. But one success does not prove your point. What other challenges do you propose? Webb smiled as he realized his strategy was working. Over the following weeks, he presented increasingly complex scenarios that required all three clans to contribute their unique abilities. They competed against previous performance records rather than against each other, turning their warrior instincts toward constructive goals. The breakthrough came during a challenge that involved establishing a new colony on a hostile world. Each clan had to contribute essential elements: predator mobility for exploration, hunter defense for protection, and berserker power for construction. But success required them to integrate their efforts completely. Dr. Stone made the crucial discovery during her linguistic analysis of their communication patterns. Marcus, they're not just cooperating, they're developing new language structures to describe collaborative achievement. They're literally inventing words for concepts they've never needed before. The warrior culture isn't disappearing, it's evolving, Webb observed as he watched clan leaders working together to solve engineering problems. They're still competing, but now they're competing to contribute more effectively to group success. By the end of the month, the three major savage clan factions had formed an unprecedented alliance. They maintained their individual cultural identities and their warrior traditions, but now channeled those qualities toward mutual benefit rather than mutual destruction. War Chief Scarfang approached Webb during the final ceremony marking the end of the challenges. Human Marcus, you have shown us something we did not know existed. We remain warriors, but now we fight for creation rather than destruction. Blood Speaker Redclaw added her own tribute. Your species understands that strength comes not from defeating others, but from helping others become stronger. This is wisdom worthy of the greatest warriors. Battle Lord Irontooth completed the formal acknowledgement. The Outer Rim Clan's request formal recognition from your Galactic Council, and we ask that Earth represent our interests in galactic politics. News of the successful integration of the savage clans sent shock waves throughout Council space. Species that had been considered irredeemably violent were now requesting diplomatic recognition, and they uniformly credited humanity with showing them a path to peaceful coexistence while maintaining their warrior heritage. The Great Hall of Zentari Prime had never seen such chaos in its 2,000-year history. Emergency council sessions were being held around the clock, as representatives from hundreds of worlds tried to understand the implications of humanity's success with the savage clans. The carefully maintained order of galactic civilization was being challenged by ideas that no one had considered possible. Ambassador Keffer sat in his assigned seat watching his political career collapse around him. Every assessment he had made about human capabilities had proven catastrophically wrong, and other Zelonian delegates were already discussing his replacement. The species he had dismissed as primitive and disorganized had fundamentally changed the nature of galactic politics in less than 6 months. Order in the assembly, called the council speaker. As delegates continued their heated discussions, we are here to address the formal request for recognition from the unified Outer Rim clans, and their request for Earth to serve as their diplomatic representative. General Vexthorn stood at the military advisor's podium, looking older and more tired than anyone had ever seen him. His resignation letter sat on the speaker's desk, but had not yet been formally accepted. The proud warrior was struggling to understand how human tactics had made his lifetime of military experience seem obsolete. The strategic implications are unprecedented, he announced in a voice that lacked its usual confidence. The humans have not conquered the savage clans through superior firepower. Instead, they have transformed the fundamental nature of warfare itself. They have turned conflict into cooperation, while maintaining the warrior spirit that drives these cultures. Ethereal Prime Consciousness Void Whisper manifested at the center of the chamber with energy patterns that betrayed its extreme agitation. The ancient being had orchestrated the impossible test, expecting humanity to fail, and instead had created the greatest diplomatic revolution in galactic history. This outcome was not anticipated. The entity communicated with obvious distress, radiating from its energy form. The humans have not simply solved problems, they have changed the basic parameters of how problems are understood and addressed. Such unpredictability threatens the stability we have maintained for millennia. But the tide of opinion in the chamber was turning against the isolationist faction. Representative after representative stood to speak in favor of humanity and the new approaches they had brought to galactic civilization. The Delphinians and Quartzlings jointly praised human innovation. In their successful trade partnership, military leaders from dozens of species requested access to human tactical training programs. Dr. Crystalthoughts from the Academic Union activated his mechanical voice projection system. Fellow council members, we are witnessing the emergence of a new paradigm in galactic relations. The humans approach challenges by seeking to understand their fundamental nature, rather than simply applying established solutions. This methodology could benefit all our civilizations, Counselor Mindweave of the Telepathic Collective projected her thoughts to the entire assembly. I have examined the mental patterns of species that have worked with humans. In every case, they report increased satisfaction with outcomes and improved relationships with other species. The human influence appears to be genuinely beneficial. The debate continued for 3 days, as delegates struggled with concepts that challenged everything they thought they knew about civilization and progress. Some species feared that human methods would undermine their traditional power structures. Others saw opportunities for growth and improvement that had never existed before. On Earth, President Chen prepared for her journey to Centauri Prime aboard the flagship UES Liberty. The massive vessel represented humanity's growing confidence in their role among the stars. Dr. Webb had returned as a hero and was now serving as humanity's first galactic ambassador, while the former savage clans had established their own embassy. On Luna, the Liberty's escort included ships from the unified Outer Rim clans who insisted on providing protection for their human advocates. War Chief Scarfang commanded the Predator vessel's swift strike while Blood Speaker Redclaw led the Hunter ship Iron Shield. Battle Lord Irontooth brought the massive Berserker Dreadnought Starcrusher. As a demonstration of their commitment to Earth, Captain Morrison stood on the Liberty's bridge watching the approaching Council space with mixed emotions. He had been promoted to Admiral and given command of Earth's growing interstellar fleet, but part of him missed the simple days when humanity was just trying to prove itself worthy of galactic recognition. Admiral, we're receiving docking clearance from Centauri. Prime Control reported Lieutenant Carter from the communication station. They're directing us to the primary diplomatic berth, normally reserved for founding council members. Morrison smiled at the symbolic importance of their assigned docking position. Earth was no longer being treated as a probationary member, but as a major power in galactic politics. The change in status reflected humanity's rapid rise from unknown newcomers to influential leaders. President Chen's address to the full council assembly became legendary in galactic history. She stood at the same podium where Ambassador Kethfer had once dismissed humanity as primitive and disorganized, while representatives from over 1,000 worlds listened with respectful attention. Fellow council members, you tested our diplomacy and we brought you innovative solutions. She began with quiet confidence. You tested our military capabilities and we brought you new tactical concepts. You tested our courage by asking us to face the impossible, and we brought you new allies and new hope. The chamber fell silent as Chen paused to look around at the assembled delegates. Many were species that had initially opposed human membership, while others were representatives of worlds that had joined the council specifically because of humanity's influence. But perhaps the most important test has been our own, she continued. We have learned that our role in the galaxy is not to prove we are worthy of joining your civilization, but to help all of us create a better civilization together. The vote that followed was unprecedented in council history. Not only did Earth receive full membership by unanimous decision, but the Assembly adopted new policies encouraging creative problem solving and cultural integration. The principles that became known as the Human Protocols were formally incorporated into council law. Dr. Webb took his oath as humanity's first permanent galactic ambassador, while representatives from the Outer Rim clans watched with pride. War Chief Scarfang had been elected as their joint spokesperson, and his presence at the ceremony symbolized the transformation that human influence had brought to galactic politics. 1 year later, the Galactic Council had grown from 847 member species to over 1,200 as humanity's approach to integration brought dozens of previously isolated civilizations into the galactic community. The council chambers buzzed with diverse voices working together toward common goals, instead of being dominated by a few ancient powers maintaining rigid traditions. Ambassador Kethfer now served as an aide to Ambassador Webb, having found new purpose in helping other species understand human methods. His personal transformation reflected the changes happening throughout galactic civilization, as traditional approaches gave way to innovative thinking and cooperative problem solving. We measured them by our standards and never imagined they would raise the standards for all of us, he wrote in his personal journal. The humans didn't just join our civilization, they helped us discover what civilization could become. The story concluded with humanity's greatest realization, that they hadn't simply earned their place in the galactic community, but had helped transform it into something better than it had ever been before. Earth's children were no longer visitors among the stars, but partners in building a future, where diversity and creativity were valued above conformity and tradition. Captain Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood on the observation deck of Earth's newest space station, watching ships from hundreds of different worlds dock at the bustling interstellar port. The small blue planet that had once seemed isolated and insignificant had become one of the galaxy's most important diplomatic and cultural centers. The Council had underestimated Earth, but in doing so had given humanity the opportunity to show the galaxy something it had forgotten. Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from following established rules, but from having the courage to write new ones.